All right, ramblers, let's get rambling. Let's talk about the English Reformation today. This sexy, sexy man that you see here in the center of your screen is Henry VIII. He was King of England and he changed the world. Specifically, he changed the lives of six women, and two of them got to find that out firsthand when he had them executed. All right. He was once a good Catholic. When Martin Luther was doing all that stuff with the 95 Theses and saying that there was only two sacraments and not the seven that the Catholics said, he actually wrote a pamphlet that said, in defense of the seven sacraments. He believed wholeheartedly that Luther was wrong and that we needed to get back to, quashing this Protestant Reformation. That was before he needed the Protestants. Okay, so in 1521, when Luther was at the Diet of Worms, the Pope read the defense of seven sacraments written by Henry and was like, "Thank you, Henry," and he awarded him like a medallion to sort of like venerate what he had done. Defense of the seven sacraments, thanks for being a great Catholic. We really appreciate you, Henry VIII. Okay. So here's the Pope saying, good boy, we appreciate you, we love you. All right. And he is given the title as Defender of the Faith. Interesting. Okay. Now let's look at the House of Habsburg. Habsburgs are the family in control of pretty much all of Europe. If you see in the white areas, that's where they have no control. But keep in mind, before the Protestant Reformation, everybody was Catholic. So there was no need to get into religious warfare unless you were fighting Muslims. So who owns the House of Habsburg? Right now, it's this guy, Charles V. He comes to power when Martin Luther famously wrote the 95 Theses. He's about 20, 21 years old. He is Flemish, which means he's from the Netherlands, and he is wildly unprepared for the situation at hand. You can see if you had all of these holdings all around Europe, how difficult that would be to control. And that's exactly what happens. It's very difficult. And plus, the Ottomans are coming and they're going to start encroaching on Habsburg territory. So it's hard to fight, threats within your empire and threats outside of your empire at the same time. Okay, so let's take a look. Henry VIII marries into the powerful house of, the Habsburgs. Why? Because Ferdinand and Isabella are king and queen of Spain. They unite Spain, kick out the Moors, and in 1492 reclaim the Iberian Peninsula. They have a daughter. That daughter's name is Catherine of Aragon. Catherine of Aragon is related to Charles V because she is his auntie. All right. More on this later, but Catherine of Aragon marries Henry VIII, and they have a daughter, Mary Tudor of England. You might know her as Bloody Mary. Yes, that Bloody Mary. Don't say that in a mirror 3 times. All right. Okay, let's advance here. The problem with Henry's marriage to Catherine was that they didn't have a son. And everyone knows that a queen is just a glorified baby making house. And you got to have a son, right? Henry had already received a papal dispensation or papal approval to marry Catherine in the first place because his brother was married to her. And you know that women, wealthy, noble women, cannot get married to royalty if they are not virgins. So she was married to Henry's brother. Henry's brother dies of tuberculosis. But France and England still want that nice unity. And how do we do that? We marry. That's how we, take over countries. We either marry them to increase our power, or we go to war and overtake them. Marriage is a lot easier, a lot less bloodshed. So, because they still wanted that, they wrote the Pope and they said, Pope, can we say that Catherine is a virgin? And the Pope gives them the okay. He says, yes, absolutely. Catherine is still a virgin. That first marriage to the dead older brother who was supposed to be king, annulled. She can go ahead and marry Henry. So she does. But they don't have a baby. Specifically, they don't have a boy baby. You need a boy baby. All righty. So let's look at the bad luck. All right, the bad luck from Catherine. Now, you might look at this and think, holy crap, why does nobody survive? Well, here's the deal. Just because you were rich and royal did not mean that you had a baby that was going to make it into the world. Childbirth was extremely dangerous for mom and for baby. So it was often just reckless. Like, it was a very scary time to be alive. All right. So Catherine has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 children. Only one, the girl, the future Bloody Mary, Mary Tudor, will survive. So she had so many sons, but none of them survived. Now, Henry becomes very upset because she's about 37 years old, and it's like pretty obvious that she's never going to be able to have said son. He knows that her fertility days are over. Enter Anne Boleyn. All right. Sorry. Canon law did not allow a man to marry his deceased wife's brother. This is going back to Arthur. So what they had to do was, this is, thou shalt not uncover the nakedness of thy brother's wife. It is thy brother's nakedness. So some Bible rule that says you can't marry your dead brother's wife required papal dispensation. Dispensation is one of the words that you'll see in your textbook. And a dispensation is kind of like papal approval. You go ahead and you get married to Catherine. So Henry does. Henry's actually like a little bit younger. I think he's like about 3 years younger than Catherine. And in the beginning, their marriage is kind of successful. But after he cannot have a son and she miscarries so many sons, he starts to look at it like God's judgment and God's punishment, because he won't have a son to look at the belly on Jesus. That's unfortunate. Anyway, I digress. You cannot continue your royal line with a woman. It was just unheard of. So another woman shows up. And this is what I like to call Hotsy Totsy Anne Boleyn. Here's the famous bee necklace with the 3 pearls hanging down. Anne Boleyn was smart, capable, and shrewd. Henry had had an affair with her older sister, but he kicked her to the curb easily. And the unfortunate part about this is that there is no glory in being the mistress to a king. Once he casts you aside, you have like options. And those options include like destitute poverty and obscurity, or you could go join a convent because you have to confess your sins, right? Anne Boleyn sees what happens to her older sister when she's with Henry, and she doesn't want that to happen to her. So she does something really calculated. She plays hard to get. He wants to get an annulment, which, Anne says, look, you can get an annulment. Say that marriage never happened. work on the Pope. Tell him how you feel. And if he does not give you approval to remarry, there might be other options. And in the meantime, she does not enter his bedchambers, if you know what I mean. All right. Now, this is a new pope. The one who gave the papal dispensation that said, go ahead and marry your dead brother's wife is a different pope. This pope says, look, we've got the Protestant Reformation going on. We've already been, accused of so much corruption. We don't need this in our lives. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and say, no, Henry, that is not allowed. You cannot divorce or annul that marriage. So Henry goes from being the defender of the Catholic faith to a little cranky pants. And he's all like, can't stop me. I do what I want. And he decides to leave the Catholic Church. And to do this, he really is scared, actually. He is very frightened because he doesn't want to go to war with his current wife's nephew, who is emperor of the entire Habsburg dynasty. So in 1534, he calls all of Parliament and all of the priests together. And he says, look, if you agree to make me head of the Church of England, I will liquidate the monasteries everywhere. And guess what you can do? You can buy them. You can buy that wonderful monastery land at a very cheap price. And people were like, wow, oh God, okay. So in 1534, he becomes head of the English Church, which is Church of England, also known as Anglican. All right. They declare him the supreme head of the Catholic Church. But it's not Catholic anymore because they're like, no, the Pope's no longer the man. And then he goes ahead and he dissolves the monasteries and executes the abbey who won't accept him being the head of the Catholic Church. Yeah, because that's what you do. All right. He gets stacks of cash from this. I mean, he really makes bank. And he sells all of this monastery land to what's called the landed gentry. These are two pictures of people who have nothing but money. Now, whenever you're looking at a picture of wealthy people in European history, you will notice their wealth by the mere fact that someone is painting a picture of them, especially if it's a portrait. Usually it's rich people. Secondly, they have extra things that aren't needed to live. This landed gentry photo is probably like a wedding, not a photo, a wedding painting is, look at the extra material, the fine shoes that his wife has. He's got a gun, a fine hat, a dog, and all of this land. So it really bolsters the English landowning class, and that's going to come into play in a little bit. All right. Not everyone is happy, especially in the North where a lot of Catholics are. And they start to sort of rebel. They're not into this. Catholics had been doing a lot of things. So the Pilgrimage of Grace is sort of like the Catholics trying to fight back. Henry's reforms were met with resistance in northern England, where monasteries were an important part of the community and vital to the elderly. So instead of Martin Luther or John Calvin having those religious convictions that spurred their reasons for separating from the Catholic Church, his were political, economic, and personal. He just got it done. All right. It wasn't really so much about faith. his motives were definitely about maintaining that dynasty. He is conservative. He doesn't want to stray from Catholic Church teachings too much because he enjoys that hierarchy of power. He just, doesn't want to, you know what I'm saying? he doesn't want to give up his family name, the Tudor dynasty. So, while Henry reigned, few changes were made in doctrine and practice to differentiate the Anglican Church from the Roman Catholic Church. Yeah, because he liked the hierarchy. That's my boy. Okay, now, Henry VIII has 6 wives. Only one wife gives him a son, and she dies in childbirth. He beheads 2 wives, Anne Boleyn, who famously gave birth to Queen Elizabeth I, maybe the most powerful and amazing queen that England has ever had. Anyway, he is succeeded by his son, Edward VI, who is a mamby-pamby, weak son. And if you look at him, you can see, look, he looks like he has scurvy. He's never seen, vitamin C. All right. So Henry dies and Edward is crowned. I'm sorry. Edward VI is crowned at age 9 and he dies at 16. Now, between the ages of 9 and 16, you're not going to do a lot of ruling. You'll have kind of regent rulers whispering in your ear. He's a boy. He has no idea. I mean, if you're 9 years old, think about what you liked to do when you were 9. You're still playing Legos and maybe you peed your pants. Okay, so he's not in charge. It's just they're like grooming him. All right. He moves England in a decidedly Protestant direction. He is not interested in Catholicism at all. All right. The Anglican Church was able to make up many power grabs during his reign because, 9 to 16, right? He died probably before he even had his driver's license. Just kidding. They didn't have cars. And if anybody believes that they did, then holy crap. Okay. He really wanted and depended on this guy. Thomas Cranmer, he is the Archbishop of Canterbury and the senior bishop of the Church of England. He's got a mixed reputation. He wants to pass a book of common prayer. That means that everywhere that the United Kingdom sort of has some sort of jurisdiction on will use this book. And that's not going to make everyone happy because this book is like, this is how you have to pray. These are the new prayers that you have to use. Yeah, no. All right. However, they do take away one thing that Catholic priests have. They're allowed to marry and they don't have to practice clerical celibacy. This is the Lady Jane Grey. Right after mamby-pamby, poor son, Edward VII dies, the Lady Jane Grey is appointed queen, and she's queen for about 10 minutes before they chop off her head. Because guess who's coming to town? That was his Protestant relative. Didn't work. But there is someone else ready to take the throne. Mary I, as you remember, is the woman who survived, the only child that survived from Catherine of Aragon and Henry VIII's first marriage. She is written back into the will in Henry VIII's last years of life, and she wants to come back, and she has an axe to grind. She wants to restore Catholicism. And how? So one of the first things that she does is she forces everybody to be Catholic again. And the second thing she does is she's going to marry the heir to the Habsburg dynasty, Philip II. So this is their wedding portrait. And England is not thrilled about this. They don't like her specifically because she decided, oh, yeah, they're first cousins. So, yeah. Can you imagine going to a party and saying, like, hey, who's that chick over there? She's hot. Oh, that's your first cousin. Oh, 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 well, introduce us. What the heck? Anyway, why do we call Bloody Mary Bloody Mary? We call Bloody Mary Bloody Mary because she forced Catholicism back on the people of England. She forced them to renounce their Protestant faith, got rid of the Anglican Church, and said, you will be Catholic or you will burn. And so the first one to be martyred is Thomas Cranmer, who, refuses to accept Catholicism and is burned at the stake. He is one of 300 people who is burned at the stake for not accepting Catholicism. So that's why we have that nickname. All right. John Knox. John Knox, as you remember from our previous lectures, is the guy who takes Calvinism to Scotland. And I'm going to stop right there because that's all I want you to hear today. All righty, we'll be back.